Welcome to Module 8 of the Cancer Toolkit. Please ensure that you've completed all the previous modules before completing this one. This module will cover having meaningful conversations about cancer. What today's session covers, will explain why it's important to have more conversations about cancer. The skills for having good conversations, such as empathy and compassion and active listening, some of the barriers to talking about cancer and how to overcome them, and skills for having good conversations, such as asking good questions, conversations with people who have cancer, and creating conditions for good conversations. So, some facts about cancer before we get into it. There are around 375,000 new cancer cases in the UK every year. That's around 1,000 every day. And up to half of cancers are preventable. According to the World Health Organization, between 30 and 50% of cancers are preventable. And cancer survival rates are significantly higher if cancers are caught early. Screening and early detection really does save lives. For example, 9 in 10 people survive bowel cancer if caught at stage 1. Compared to, I think it's 17% at stage 4. So that early detection really does save lives. Here's a little video just showing about the Let's Talk Cancer campaign that ran in East Lancashire. So, why talking is important? Well, we know that talking helps us sort through our feelings. It helps us release tension. Some of you will have heard the term, a problem shared is a problem halved. It can also help us to get things in perspective. When we're in our own heads for too long, we can overthink things. We can take things out of all reasonable perspective. And talking can often give us a sense of control. We take it out of here and we put it out there. And when we're talking to someone, it can help us create action. It can help us get a plan in place. If someone says, well, great, when are you going to do that? It can help us, them then hold us to account for what it is we need to do. So if we're going to talk to somebody about cancer, which can be quite an emotive subject, quite an emotional and emotive subject, then we need to get our head into the right place before we do that. We need to consider things like empathy and compassion. We need to get ourselves ready to actively listen and ask questions that are relevant, ask questions that are going to try and get us to where we want to go. And we need to consider the environment in which we're going to start talking. So we'll just get into that now. Well, what do we mean when we talk about empathy and compassion? What we're looking for, the 4 attributes of empathy, are to be able to see the world as others see it, not just as we see it, to be able to step inside their world and try and get an idea of where they're coming from, and to be non-judgmental in that, to listen a lot, to see a lot, and then not think, well, maybe this doesn't apply to what I think and feel. To understand another person's feelings and to communicate understanding of that person's feelings. It's really powerful when you say something back to somebody in a way that shows them that you've understood what they were saying. It can have a huge impact on somebody and further that working relationship. We also need to think about our listening and communication skills. Some of the components of communication, one we all know, of course, is verbal, the words we actually use, the words that we choose that come out of our mouths, but also as tone of voice has a huge impact on how something can come across to somebody. The way we say something, the speed, the tone, the volume can make a huge difference. And our body language at the same time. We know that folding his arms can appear to be closed off and defensive. So we don't want to be doing that when we're talking to somebody. We want to make sure our facial expression's positive and our gestures with his hand as body posture. And when we combine all three of these, we'll be effectively communicating with that person. So what do we mean when we talk about active listening anyway? What it does is it requires that we get inside the speaker, that we grasp from their point of view what it is they are communicating to us. But it's more than that. We must convey to the speaker that we are seeing things from their point of view. It's a really big deal. It really matters. And very few of us do this day to day. We talk to people, we chat away, we wait to speak in conversations. But to sit and actively listen, to really try and understand what somebody's saying to us, it takes practice and it takes commitment and concentration. So some of the elements, as I've just mentioned there, of active listening are paying attention, of showing somebody that you're listening and providing feedback. Defer judgment, allow them to say what they're going to say. Don't jump in and say, well, actually, no, I don't think this, or actually, have you tried that? Let them roll with it. And then consider what's responding appropriately to what somebody's just said. And if we want to do that effectively, then we need to consider some of these tips. We need to remove distractions. We don't want somebody walking in and out of the room while somebody's talking about something that's very personal to them. We want to concentrate mindfully on the other person and use eye contact, but not stare them down. We want to use eye contact approximately 60 to 70% of the time and allow silences and pauses. When we ask a question, let somebody sit with that question. It may take a minute, it may take two sometimes for somebody to respond, but we don't want to feel awkward and fill that silence, which happens so often in our daily lives. It's okay to let that silence and that pause just sit there while someone gathers their thoughts. And we don't want to plan what we're going to say before they finish speaking. That's that whole waiting to speak thing instead of listening. So how do we know if someone is listening? Well, signs are often that they nod their head, they mirror our body language. So you may notice that they start, if we unfold our arms, they unfold there. If we've got our hands on the hips or our thighs, they may well do the same. They make agreeing noises. They'll repeat key points, which shows that they've been listening to what we've said. They'll ask relevant questions to what's just been stated. They'll smile, although not everyone. Only smile if you're comfortable smiling, because that can, look strange. Make eye contact. Use the same words. If you say partner, so do they. And remembering things from earlier on and before. It can be really flattering in a group setting when somebody turns around, if it was to me and said, oh, can we just go back to a point Darren made earlier in the meeting? It's a lovely feeling that, they not only did they listen, but now they're bringing it back into the meeting. And we should do this with people because it builds this rapport that we need in order for them to feel they trust us enough so that they can go on and talk about things that are very personal to them. And how do we know what's the flip side of that? If someone's not listening, they're checking the phone, they're interrupting, they're looking at the watch or a clock, they're fidgeting, they're not asking follow-up questions, they're laughing at something that's been said or looking away or implying a thought or idea is stupid, disagreeing about whether someone is important to someone or leaning away. We've all had that. It's very uncomfortable. We're not going to get very far away if we're trying to have a serious, supportive and positive conversation with someone if we're behaving in that way. And the impact of active listening can make a huge difference. We can think that we're listening, but when somebody's truly locked in and giving us their full attention and concentrating on trying to understand as best as they can what it is we're trying to convey, can really matter. Can make a huge difference to somebody just by doing that for them. So that's why we need to learn how to do that, and we need to practice it every day, but certainly in our professional lives. And this is just a little video which just shows how to really go about and raise conversations.
I remember messaging you and asking you, yo, you around? You want to meet? I want to meet. Have you got time to meet?
We're lying there and it's calm, and that happy feeling just left.
Yeah.
It was just boom, it was back down to how I feel all the time. That's when I was like, do you know what, I just have to tell the truth, I have to tell someone.
We were walking down the aisle.
There was no aisle.
Well, no, it was kind of a piece of carpet.
It was 3 feet.
Yeah.
That's all we had.
And you told me those three things. A, how old you really
It
are.
really was.
Yes.
B, that I'd been married twice before.
Yeah.
And C, that I was mentally ill.
I think it was about 6 months into Rebecca's passing when we was in Qatar that I plucked the courage, if you like, even though I've known you 20 years, to actually say, how are you? And start to sort of mention some memories and what a fantastic lady she was and whatnot, and it got us talking. And after 15, 20 minutes, I think we ended up both sort of crying our eyes out on the beach.
People say, oh, no, he's, very successful. It was only when you stopped doing that and had a massive crash that it became obvious that things had to really be addressed.
And then, so that time, I think it was your idea, let's go out for a walk, let's go and talk about it, da-da-da-da-da. And we went out here and we went over there, and I felt I was going insane.
You came to the office and you said, I'm exhausted. It was the first time that I suddenly thought, actually, there's something wrong.
And you sit there and you've got like knots in your stomach, and I was just like, it's got to come out of my mouth, it's got to. And I was like, I'm going to stumble over my words, I'm going to mess it up, I'm not going to say it how it needs to come out. I remember just spurting it out and being like, I honestly want to run away, that's how I feel. And the minute it came out of my mouth and I said it out loud, I was just like, that is ridiculous.
And that is the point, is that actually it's okay to have that conversation, even if it is uncomfortable or awkward, but it's just starting it.
And if you're worried about talking about something, it's a nice little image to sum that up. I'm sure you did this, maybe you've not done it for a while, but holding an inflatable ball underwater, and trying to keep it there, and it's just trying to come to the surface when you're worried about something, but you push it down, and that takes energy, that takes emotional energy. So we want to be able to talk something through with somebody and discuss it and know that we'll be listened to. That's the dream outcome, really. So what conversations might we have? Well, we might have conversations about the screening programs, or somebody's positive result from a cancer screening, or behaviour changes to reduce the risk of cancer. People know they shouldn't be smoking, and yet they still do. People know that they should be exercising more, and yet they don't. So we might want to raise these type of conversations in a way that isn't sanctimonious and preachy. Nobody wants to be told all the time. People that smoke, I guarantee, know that they shouldn't. They know that it's a harmful thing to do, and yet they still choose to. So just berating them for that is not a good way to go on. They know that. But finding a way to get in and alongside them and encourage them to maybe change that, that's where the real gold lies. Some people may want to speak about the fact that they're on a cancer journey at the time of the conversation. Other people may have had cancer or may have lost somebody through cancer, close family friend or relative, So we want to get those listening skills. We want to be asking the right questions and then showing them that we're listening to what's being said. So this just looks at now asking questions and creating conditions for conversations. So what's the difference between an open and closed question? We mentioned that open questions are important earlier. And literally an open question opens up a conversation, whereas a closed question will close it down. So we don't want questions really that have a yes or no answer. Did you go for your screening appointment will be a yes or no. Or how was it when you went to your screening appointment? We can't say yes or no to that. We have to open up. And someone might say, oh, I never went. And then you can follow that up with, you never went. Well, what were the reasons that you couldn't go? Instead of saying, will you go next time? So we want to keep the conversation rolling with open questions. And we do that by using words like what, when, where, who, why, how. Although too many why questions we might want to avoid, But certainly we want to keep the conversation flowing. So what questions might you ask? This is another little video that will just show how you may want to go on with that. So, some ways we may want to talk to somebody with cancer. We may want to use questions like, or statements such as, this must be a tough time for you, or I can't imagine how you feel, or I'm sorry you're going through something like this, or I don't know what to say. You know, that's fine. We're not there to have all the answers. You know, I don't know what to say. I'm struggling. That's why I want to listen. We don't always want to say, we want to listen, you know. Or I'm here for you if you need to talk. You know, how are you really? Because how many times do we get asked, you know, how are you? So, I'm fine. And then if you just dug 5 minutes deeper, someone would say, actually, no, my head's all over the place. I'm in pieces. I've got X, Y, and Z going on. You know, I feel like I'm just getting through my days, you know. And just giving them that option, you know, I can talk about me if you like. It doesn't always have to be about them. Sometimes people who are going through a cancer journey, the last thing they want is to talk about more cancer. They want to talk about what's going on for you, or shoot the breeze about a documentary they saw last night, or whatever else. They want a distraction from the head game that is the cancer. But yeah, please allow enough time to have the conversation. Choose a quiet, private space. Demonstrate empathy, as we've talked about, and offer support as appropriate. You know, don't go steaming in there. Oh, well, I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll do the other. Somebody might not need that. They might not want that from us. They may just need that 20-minute conversation. They may have other people in place to help with other things. But let's find out by asking those open questions. What we want to avoid is things like, you know, oh, don't worry, I'm sure you'll be fine. Or maybe just try and stop focusing on the negative things. Imagine someone saying that to you. You've just had a lung cancer diagnosis. You know, we don't want to be diagnosing either. Oh, well, this sounds like this or that or the other. We don't want to be judgmental and making assumptions. You know, asking someone who's just told you they've had a lung cancer diagnosis if they smoke. You know, come on. And making it about us. Often people will say, in order to try and build a rapport, people will say things like, you know, oh yeah, well, when I went for my cervical screening, or when my mum went for her mammogram. You know, that may come up later on in the conversation, but remember what we were doing with the active listening. For now, it's about them. We just want to find out what's going on for them, you know. So let's not be jumping in as well and giving them advice, saying, oh, I heard of someone who just ate cabbage for a week and their cancer went away, or whatever else. We are not there to be doing the talking. You know, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 1 mouth. We want to be kind of using them in that ratio and letting them talk and letting them lead the conversation. So, just to recap, what we've covered is, you know, why it's good to talk about cancer, because it's a naturally occurring condition that affects half of us in his lifetime. So we need to get those conversations out there. Hopefully you feel that we've overcome some of the barriers to difficult conversations, and that you now feel that you know what having a good conversation is all about, you know, and using empathy and active listening, using questions, setting up a good conversation so the person can get the most out of it. And, you know, in return, so can we, because a conversation is a two-way thing. But sometimes we're listening and sometimes we're, you know, talking. And once again, these are some great resource places to be signposted to. Organisations like Macmillan, Breast Cancer Now, LeedsCancer.com, we're on there. The NHS, just look for reputable, reliable sources rather than wandering off down rabbit holes online where you will find all manner of conflicting and often untrue information. This now concludes Module 8 of the Cancer Toolkit. Please now move on to complete the assessment before moving on to Module 9. Thank you.